What's up, everybody, and welcome back to yet another special edition of Ask PJ Braun, not at Blackstone Labs, but again, back here in the kitchen of Colonel Feezy. And so we have an extremely special guest for you today. Mr. Tony Huge is on the line with us currently, and we've got a plethora of questions which have been sent in by you, the loyal viewers, and we're going to get into this. It's going to be ridiculous here.
So, for starters, welcome, Dr. Tony Huge.
Thank you, PJ. Glad to be speaking with another friend of freedom.
So, listen to this, buddy. We didn't retire the podcast. We love the podcast. We actually did. What did we do? 50 episodes last year. We did a lot. We had a pretty impressive number, and it's gotten super popular, and we've had some fun guests on, but we're in the process of transitioning from one warehouse building to another, and so we have no podcast room. So we're like, you know what? Let's put it on hold until we get back. But we had a big one that we really wanted to do with Flex Wheeler. And so we set up shop here at Josh's house, and we did the Flex podcast. It was super, super popular. And we figured, all right, well, that'll hold everybody over until then. But then we just had this plethora of people that were saying, you should do something with Tony Huge. You should do something with Tony Huge. And I was like, all right, well, I'll ask him. I don't know if he's going to want to or not. And you did. So thank you very much for giving our listeners what they want.
Yeah, you and I had some good conversations at the last few expos, and so this is the natural progression of collaborating together. I'm excited, especially since I'm sure your fans and my fans have a lot of mutual, there's probably a lot of mutual fans with a lot of questions that you and I both love answering.
Absolutely. And so my fans now know that they see the coming attractions because we're about halfway through the Generation Iron Muscle Mogul series, and you are being featured by Generation Iron also.
Yeah, the movie comes out March 8th. So, yeah, I'm pretty excited. I know my fans will love it. I'm really curious how the mainstream's going to feel about it, though, because it is very pro-steroid.
Well, I had lunch with Edwin and Vlad last week down in Miami, and they said that it's very controversial.
Yeah. So it's approved for Netflix because I know it's going to be on iTunes and Amazon Prime and these other things, but I've not seen something like it on Netflix. And if it was, whoa, we'd open up some minds.
Oh, well, hopefully.
The goal of it. I use steroids to try and open up people's minds about other taboos in their life that they might think are bad because of the misinformation they've got, and try to open their mind to see it from a different perspective.
Well, let's talk, before we get into your questions, let's talk a little bit about Dr. Tony Huge and how this all started, because, you know, maybe I know and your specific listeners know, but maybe a lot of my listeners don't. So before we get into answering your questions, I'd like them to know a little bit more about your background and how this Dr. Tony Huge entertaining persona came to be.
Sure, I'll try to explain in 1 minute. So I obsessed with bodybuilding starting somewhere around age 12, 13, when my first girlfriend told me she wanted a boyfriend with abs. Okay. So I thought I had to get abs to get the girl, and then, you know, from there I thought I had to keep getting more muscle to get more girls, and so it started being like for a lot of people to get girls, because I was a nerd, I didn't really fit in with everybody else that well, so that was became sort of my ego, and what I was known for is bodybuilding, and natural all the way up until I was age 30. I'm 36 right now. I was a businessman, entrepreneur, real estate, lawyer, sold my law office about 3.5 years ago, and intended to just retire completely. At that time I was experimenting with steroids because I was very anti-drug up until age 30. I wouldn't have been taking NyQuil. Maybe age 27 when my mind started really opening up about the benefits that drugs could confer when they're used properly and with intention. So then fast forward to selling my law office because my baby mama got pregnant in order to try to trap me, and I did not want to have money. I did not want to be a target. So I practically burned a lot of my fortune at the time, or hid it just to prevent her from being able to come at me.
Oh, why had I done that?
Everything's going wonderful with her now. We're together, and we have and our daughters.
Oh, wait a minute. I didn't realize we're talking about the woman that you're with now. Yeah. Do you regret burning all that money or no?
Yes and no. So part of me blames her for it because she basically cost me millions of dollars.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, she is the type of person, and this is quite common, that money changes her.
Absolutely.
So when she first met me, she saw me as very powerful, but she saw me as having control of my own money, and she would never have control over it. Once she got pregnant, she realized, and her friends all told her, that then she has power over me, and she had a complete 180-degree personality change, and she was trying to abuse that power. So then fast forward again, once I made it very clear to her that all the money was gone and there was nothing she could ever get me for, once she finally truly believed that, more recently actually, then she switched back to who she was before, which is a wonderful, very peaceful Filipina immigrant girl, sort of like a village girl style. She's back to seeing that.
I like that.
I really like it. So far, you are great.
He did a really good job summarizing it fast.
That was amazing.
I'm very entertained. So let's give us some more though. So you said you were natural till you were 30, but took an interest at 27. When did you actually? What was the first drug you did?
NyQuil.
NyQuil.
I don't remember exactly what age it was, but I was practicing as a lawyer, and I couldn't get any more efficient. I wanted to work 18-hour days, but when you get sick or something, then you become much less efficient. You want to work, but you're slower. And so I thought, I've got to try taking something. I've got to take a drug to. Oh, actually, I've got to rewind back to when I took Adderall.
Oh, here we go.
So I
very
took
common
Adderall
college drug.
Bar exam. So I started law school when I was 20. I had just turned the month I turned 21. I started law school early, and it was a 4-year law school. The last year of law school, I discovered Adderall. I knew about it before, but actually I wanted to start practicing with it because I knew I wanted to use it for the bar exam.
Mm-hmm.
So I started it in the last year of law school, and I went from being ranked 30 out of 45 in the law school because I always find the shortest point from line from point A to point B, and for me it was just not studying at all until it came time for a final exam, and then cramming for 16 hours. And that worked for me. I could get through law school like that, or any college for that matter. So then when it came to the bar exam, I knew I couldn't do that. I knew I had to prepare a little longer in advance. I needed an advantage to do that, to catch up and learn all the information I skipped over the last 4 years. So I took Adderall my last 4th year of law school, and I rose from being 30th in the class to being 3rd in the class. And law school is extremely competitive. The people in the top 5 especially are working really hard to compete with each other. So I just blew up to the top of the class, and then I took the bar exam and I blew it away. I mean, it was like you taking a first grade math exam. That's how easy. Because I was so prepared and my mind was so on point from the Adderall. So then that opened up my mind to drugs. But again, I didn't want to take anything that wasn't absolutely necessary. So then came the NyQuil. Then came a friend of mine was really into experimenting with all kinds of different chemicals. He's one of these bodybuilding nerds that doesn't train that hard, doesn't diet that hard, but he's obsessed with the chemistry.
Okay.
A lot of our fans are.
Yeah.
It's kind of how how I was too. So I started experimenting with the SARMs and things probably about 27 or so, and then I didn't touch the gear other than the prohormones and things. I had run those when I was younger because I didn't think of them as drugs at the time. I thought of them as supplements, sort of. And then started the steroid cycle. First steroid cycle was testosterone and turinabol. Yeah.
At least you had the test in there the first time. A lot of people make that mistake of just doing something like D-ball or DECA because they're popular in the gym, and they wind up screwing themselves up.
It actually started with just turinabol.
Interesting.
And about a week in, I knew I was kidding myself. I knew that was stupid. But at a week in, I was like, all right, I'm just being chicken. I realized that my own ego about being natty and not doing an injection and considering myself half natty by taking an oral steroid instead of a steroid was ridiculous. And then that's when I added in the first injection with a 21 gauge, 1.5 inch needle.
Those are the big ones,
Lord
the big
have
long
mercy.
ones. Where did you stick it?
right in my butt cheek, and my friend who had introduced me to all the research chemicals, he's the one who gave me my first injection. And it was so freaking painful. And now I've learned, thank God I've learned so much about how to inject better using a smaller needle and different medications.
That's horrific.
Yeah, I like when you come across the beginners and they bring those daggers out and you're like, oh my god, because I haven't seen one of those in so long.
You're like, why are you harpooning?
Yeah,
yourself?
I won't go near one of those. In the very beginning, I did too. That's
I know.
Back when I started was, what year did I start taking steroids in? Early 2000s, and back then that was like all there was these big long ones.
Honestly, I didn't stop torturing myself with the fucking whale harpoons until I started working at Blackstone. So I don't know who it was, but somebody was like, why are you doing this? And I was like, I don't know how else to do it.
Yeah, that's like the most common thing you hear from the beginners is those 21-inch 1.5s. Those are huge, but at least you went in the butt. I actually, when I didn't know any better, I was scared in the beginning, and I used to do them in my shoulder. I think that's part of the reason why I have such bad scar tissue in my shoulders now.
No.
Hey PJ, how old are you now?
38.
All right, so I'm 36. So pretty similar in age. So wow, you started gear pretty young. So have you do you regret taking gear?
No. So quick little history on me. I started bodybuilding when I was 12, very seriously, like right out the gate. So by my senior year in high school, I was already known as like the big kid, and I would go to different towns and people were like, oh, you're that bodybuilder guy, And so when I got out of high school, I wasn't big enough or fast enough to play football anymore. And I started competitively powerlifting. I won the teenage drug-free AAU National Powerlifting Championships. And in my last meet as a 198-pound lifter, I fully ruptured my biceps tendon. And I was so sad because I was only doing the powerlifting for fun. It was just fun at the time. It was just a hobby. Bodybuilding was my passion. They told me it was probably going to be a 6-month recovery time. So during my recovery, I took everything very, very seriously with all my rehabilitation stuff. And when I had gotten back in the gym, I felt like I was so far behind, and I just started really, really intensely. Like I would say by the time I was done with my surgery and back full speed at around 21, I was training as hard as most national bodybuilders do now, completely drug-free. So I was like, I want to do a bodybuilding show really bad and make up for lost time. So I had a mentor in college that I always talk about, a guy by the name of Rene Abreu, brilliant, brilliant guy. And he was kind of guiding me. And everybody was like, if you do the show, you have to do drugs. You're going to get your ass kicked. And I just didn't want to believe that. So I wanted to prove everybody wrong. That was my whole mindset. So I dieted my ass off for the Bev Francis Atlantic States. And I dieted all the way down to 189 pounds. And, I'm 5'10" and a half. So it's a skinny bodybuilder. But I was ripped. I was absolutely ripped. And I wound up placing 5th. And there was about 30 guys in the light heavyweights at that show. So people were coming up to me backstage, and they were literally saying, "Man, if you get on some shit, you're going to be good. You're natural, aren't you?" And I was like, "Man, they can all tell that I'm natural." And so I remember thinking about what I looked like after all the work, how much smaller I was, and I realized there's no way that I will be able to be as good as these guys if I don't get on steroids. And I think it's very important for everybody. No matter how good or bad your genetics are, you've got to be able to take a look at yourself and say, okay, do I look like the guys that are doing well at this? If you're going to dedicate your life to being an IFBB pro bodybuilder, right? And, you're taking steroids and you're doing all these things and you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you are not even close to what you see doing well, chances are it's just not in the cards for you. So I looked at myself and I knew there was no way naturally. So I decided that I wanted to do steroids. And the funny thing is, I had asked Rene a couple times, and the advice that he gave me that I always cherish to this day was, he said, listen, just because I do it doesn't mean you need to. You're doing fine on your own. But I'll tell you what, you want to follow my lead, follow my protocol, train with me every day, eat how I eat for a year. I will help you get it and teach you how to do it. So I was like, done. I wanted to be like him so bad. So I trained with him that whole entire year. And I was like, all right, it's been a year. I'm ready to do some steroids. Let's go. And he goes, look at how good of gains you made, though. You made amazing gains. Why do you want to stop making these gains and rely on something else when you've already did this? And I was like, well, you do it. And he goes, yeah, but look at the gains you made are actually more impressive than I've made not doing it. Come on, stick with it a little bit longer. Let's see if we can max out your potential. And so he did that to me again. And so because of Renee, I learned the importance of the nutrition and training and over-the-counter supplementation in the beginning. So once I had proved myself and showed I wasn't going anywhere, finally he was like, fine, I'll help you get some damn steroids. And I didn't even take his advice foolishly because I was talking to all the big guys and they were all doing D-ball. So in my head, I was like, I have to do D-ball. But then some of the other guys were like, oh, I like DECA the most. So I came up with this little DECA D-ball cycle. And I gained like 30 pounds, but it was super bloated. I just didn't like the way I looked. And I basically came off and started all the way over again. So I started after my 22nd birthday. So I started fairly young, but I had a full 10 years natural, behind me at that point. And I knew that I was going to go all or nothing to be a pro bodybuilder.
Were you concerned at the time about the fear of natural shutdown and having to be on TRT the rest of your life? Was that one of the things you considered?
It was, and it was funny, but some of the older guys that I worked with were like, look, listen, here's the deal. Once you're on, you're never going to want to be off ever again anyway. You're going to go through these periods of doing a post-cycle therapy and running HCG and going back clean, and you're going to hate it. And all you're going to think about is getting back on. So just get it in your head now that once you're on, you're going to wind up wanting to be on for life, and just accept that. And I kind of was like, all right, well, makes sense to me.
Come on now.
And once I retired young from competitive bodybuilding. I retired when I was 31 years old. But after I completely cleaned myself out, my old partner and I did a video series that we called it Project Small, where basically I was like, all right, here I am, PJ Braun. I've been competing at the national level for many years. I'm 260 pounds, and I am going to document everything I do coming off steroids. And I documented it all. Lost like 25 pounds over the period of like maybe 8 or 10 weeks or so. And then when we were done with Project Small and we were just back to being normal, I decided, you know what? I don't really want to be like this anymore. I'm going to at least get on some HRT, and we'll start a new series called Project Huge. And that was about 7 years ago, I suppose, when I retired. We did that, and I've been on HRT since then.
Yeah, when I decided to take steroids the first time, I knew, and I waited until I was okay with the idea of being on testosterone the rest of my life. Not that I need to be. I believe if I came off, I could take enough other things to keep my testosterone level high enough. I don't think I'm completely dependent on it, and I'm still fertile even after 6 years of chronic steroid usage.
That's
but
good.
So I went in accepting that responsibility and risk that I may have for the rest of my life too. Yeah.
A few years ago, during my marriage, I wanted to have children, and I came off of everything, and I was running the pregnancy protocol with HCG and Clomid and everything, and I felt terrible. But it was very important to me that I wanted to have children. But my ex-wife, not knowing, had done an IUD without telling me. So I was just basically shooting into her for nothing. And she kept it from me for months. And once it came out, I was livid. And I'm like, so you were okay with me just feeling like crap for the sake of trying to get you pregnant, when in reality, I was never going to get you pregnant. And she was like, well, I didn't want to have kids, but I didn't want to tell you. So after that, I got back on, and I have been on since then. By my blood work, I shouldn't be able to have children the way my blood work looks now, but I do want to have kids. So I do believe that, one of the doctors that I work with has been doing this for a long time, and he says that as bad as some of the blood work that he has seen as far as how low things like luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone can be, that he's seen people come back with the right protocols of HCG and other things. Sometimes it takes a while, but he feels confident that I'll be able to do it. So I'm going to trust in him, and if I can't, then I guess I did it to myself, and it wasn't meant to be.
Yeah, so I have another baby coming to be born in a month and a half.
Oh, congrats!
Months or so, 2 months maybe.
Awesome.
So and my follicle stimulating hormone, my luteinizing hormone on my blood work says pretty much zero.
Yeah.
And so it says I'm totally shut down, but on the other hand, I did get her pregnant, and I was on steroids when I got baby mama pregnant.
Yeah,
too.
most of my buddies were on when they got their baby mama. So a lot of people think, oh, I'm on birth control by taking steroids. I can do whatever I want. And most of my buddies have gotten their girls pregnant on steroids.
Including people that are like taking huge amounts.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, well, there should be no way I could do this now. And then all of a sudden they're like, how the fuck?
Yeah, this happens a lot. Used to be in the old days, they were like, oh, if you get on, you can do whatever you want. You're not going to, your sperm is going to be 0. You can do whatever you want. And, most of those guys figured it was no big deal. At this point, I don't use protection with my girlfriend. If she got pregnant, I would just, consider it destiny at this point. And, so I roll the dice, but we're in love and I don't plan on being with anybody else. I feel like it's a fair risk to take. And I'm old enough that, first of all, you're never really ready, I guess, when you have kids anyway, but I'm old enough where I know that I want children. So, what I wanted to know is, before we get into all the questions, this is just something that I've been dying to know. We haven't got a chance to talk about this. So, just doing my little, background check on anything. Did you partake in the ladyboys in Thailand? Because people have been asking me to ask you this like crazy, and I can't find this information online. So I was like, I'm just going to ask him and see what he says.
So there's my favorite video that I've made is actually Ladyboy Injection.
Okay.
And it's on www.anabolictv.com.
Okay.
And it's a video where it's a joke video, but it's real, but it's a joke. It's me saying, hey, everybody, I know that it's on your bucket list that you want to be injected with steroids by ladyboys. So I'm going to show you how to do it step by step. And I went on Tinder and I picked out a ladyboy and I seduced her and I got her over to the place. I had all my friends there and they're like, what the fudge? This ladyboy she's cute. She was very cute, but she also... There's some ladyboys that you can't tell.
Yeah, I had this happen to me. I showed Josh and everybody. I was watching porn one day, and I was in like this Latina page, and this girl, her name is Chanel Santini, by the way. I went and found her for all those of you out there that want to see my tranny surprise. And I was like really, really into the girl, and then all of a sudden the camera went down, and she had a big penis, and I was like, what the fuck? And I was like mesmerized, like I couldn't believe it. And so then I started searching all the girls' scenes because I couldn't believe that this was a tranny. And then I wound up crashing my computer and then having to bring it into my computer tech guy. And, it was either that or bring it to the Apple store, which would have been super embarrassing. And so I handed him the computer and I didn't say anything. And so about an hour later, he's like, hey, your computer's fixed. And so I went over to get it and I looked at him and I was like, so listen. And he just put his hand out for me to stop. And he goes, I've seen a lot of weird things over the years, man. Don't even worry about it. So I didn't even really get a chance to explain myself.
Yeah. See, everybody needs some good ladyboy stories, even if it's on the computer. But, in America, the ladyboys, and this is funny, I actually got sent on Instagram the other day. I posted on Instagram, I said, look, let me clear something up about Tony Huge and the ladyboys. Yes. Tony Huge loves ladyboys. Ladyboys are beautiful, majestical gifts from God. But ladyboys and trannies are a very different thing. And this is my definition.
Okay.
A tranny's a dude with a wig and some lipstick on.
Okay.
Maybe some highlights, right?
Yep.
But these ladyboys in these Asian countries are the most beautiful women in the world. They've invested so much money into how they look, and they're with the plastic surgery is so advanced over there that they can look like anything they want to.
Yeah.
So they look like an absolute dream girl. And the first time this happened to me is I was on my first ladyboy experience. I was on a sex tour through Asia when I was 30, maybe 31, 30, something like that. And one of the stops was Thailand, and I was in a bar, and the most beautiful girl I've ever seen came over and sat next to me. And she started rubbing on me, and she touched me in ways that women hadn't touched me before. This woman was an absolute expert. She knew exactly like a Rubik's Cube. Like most men just see a hot girl like, yeah, I'll bang her. But, until you've been with an extremely experienced woman or a ladyboy who knows all of your buttons, buttons are.
Greg Valentino used to always say that, the Ramblin' Freak on muscular development.
Oh man.
Yeah, he's got some good experience with it. Yeah. So I was ready to go home with this girl. And, oh, that's right. She said I have to tell you I'm a ladyboy, and I'm like, no freaking way. I said, here's your penis. She said, well, I had surgery. She showed me her vagina. It's a perfect vagina.
Oh wow.
For all the other girls in here, ladyboys, look around. I started noticing. Okay, yeah, some of them now I can kind of tell, but a lot of them I couldn't tell still. And then I walk outside the bar finally. I had to get pulled out by a friend because a friend was like, no, we got to go. Once he found out that they were ladyboys, he's like, we got to get out of here. I didn't. So then I went back home to the U.S. after that trip, and it was a long time between that trip and when I went back to Asia again. But I was thinking about it constantly. I was just thinking, I was so confused. I was like, how is the most beautiful girl that was the most seductive girl I've ever met, how is that a dude? How's that possible? It was like confusing to me. I wanted to revisit it and kind of explore it myself about it. So then I went back to Asia afterwards and I experimented some more and have some more great stories than we have time for. But the bottom line is I do like the ladyboys, but only the super feminine ones, like the ones that are 10s.
So post-op.
But else would too. It's just that most, especially American men, they'll never see a ladyboy that beautiful because they'll never go to Asia.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Exist.
Are they always post-op?
No, most of them are not post-op. Most of them have penises.
Now, the ones that are post-op, do you believe that they can actually have an orgasm?
I forget the answer to that because I've asked that many times, had many conversations about it, and I think that there is some sort of like prostate orgasm that happens.
That's what I've read, but it seems like hard to imagine that you could hack up the penis like that and still have sensitivity, inside after all that. But there is. I have read on the prostate stimulus. I've actually been asked this question a few times. I figure you might have a better answer than me.
Well, I know ladyboys that are pre-op that anally they have orgasms anally.
I also wonder, with most of them are taking, the more advanced ones are taking female hormones. So I have to think that would affect, if they still have the penis, their ability to not just get an erection, but even have a normal, I guess, penile
function.
Yeah, because you figure, most men, when they're having erectile dysfunction, it often comes from lower testosterone. So if they're cranking estrogen in, I would think that would be an issue also.
Yeah, and I think a lot of them, the ones that are the most feminine, they started taking estrogen before puberty or during puberty, so they never actually developed as a man. They developed as a woman, and even if they come off the birth control or the estrogen later, they still seem to stay just as feminine. Yeah. Like the puberty doesn't seem to happen later, even though maybe they're producing a little bit of testosterone, but maybe their testosterone kind of got shut down from being on estrogen the same way we get shut down from being on testosterone, partly because of the conversion to estrogen.
Thailand is supposed to be like the epicenter for this, right?
Yes.
I might have to go to Thailand for. We're opening up my dad has a distributor in Thailand, and they're going to want me to go out there. So, not saying I'm going to partake in the ladyboys, but I'll be in there. I'll be in the area.
Is the distributor a ladyboy?
That I don't know.
Or maybe we can time it when we're there together.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Stuff.
I'm a voyeur, so I may watch you with the ladyboys. So
that's funny because I like being watched.
That's perfect.
I might as well have my own porn channel. You RedTube or whatever.
We have a guy on the team. I'm not going to blow up his spot on here. Actually, I guess I can say his porno name, can't I?
I would think.
So we have a guy in the Legion. His porn name is Richard Sutherland. And he's got a very, very popular page on Pornhub. So he competed at Nationals. I'll tell a quick story, then we'll get back to Tony Huge. So he competed at Nationals in classic bodybuilding. And so I was standing outside, and I was getting ready to leave after prejudging. And he winds up, him and his girlfriend wind up coming up to me. And he was like, hey, PJBraun, I'd love to get a picture. And I was like, sure. And when we start talking, and the whole time I'm like, have I met this guy? before. And so when we're done, I was like, man, you both look so familiar. I haven't met you before. And he was like, no, I've been wanting to meet you, but this is definitely the first time. I'm from, wherever he was from in like the Midwest or something. And I was like, huh. And I never forget a face. So I was perplexed. I was like upset with myself that I felt like, I had met this guy before. So I was driving home in the car and I couldn't stop thinking about it. And then all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute. I think I've seen this guy on Pornhub. So I as soon as I got home, it was like I made it my mission to go on Pornhub, and I was searching like, bodybuilder guy, fitness couple, this and that. And I kept searching around, and sure enough, I stumbled upon him. And his Pornhub name was Richard Sutherland. And so I DM'd him on Instagram right away because he had posted our picture, and I was like, I got it. I knew that I thought I'd met you. I haven't, but I have enjoyed your performances with your girlfriend many times actually on Pornhub. And he wrote back like, wow, what a small world. He's like, that's hilarious. We have a pretty strong Pornhub following. We're hoping that we can convert some of that into the fitness world. And I said, well, you know what? I'd love to bring you on the team. And so we brought him on the team after that. So, yeah, his girlfriend is very attractive too. It's just them doing cam shows all the time.
That's awesome. I have one thing that happened similar to that, I guess. I was in Amsterdam, and I was just walking down the street, and a fan came up to me, and he's definitely a bodybuilder, fitness type guy, and was talking to him, and I'm like, what do you do here that you're like a bodybuilder in this town? There's not like a lot of fitness stuff going on here. He's like, oh, I do the live porn shows. He said, I'm going to get you some tickets. Come watch me tonight. Like, that's kind of funny. Like, we kind of became buddies, and then he's like invites me to watch him do porn live. It's kind of
that's
weird,
great.
The new guy friend you met. But I took my girlfriend there with me was the most conservative girl ever. I mean, this girl's like she's only slept with a couple guys. She's 36 years old. She's a businesswoman, and she's just extremely conservative. Mm-hmm. And I brought her to watch this live sex show. Of course, she's never seen anything like that in her life. Blew her mind, so it was epic. And then one more thing about the Ladyboys. My friends told me, oh, you're going to go on PJ's podcast? Just promise me one thing. Don't talk about Ladyboys anymore. but
too late.
I need to connect the dots for people, though, because I'm not just trying to be sensationalist when I do Ladyboy stuff on camera. It's to try and change people's perspectives, to open up their minds. So I pick some certain things that I think are the biggest taboo, or the people who are the most, especially American men who I prefer to help the most, to open up their minds the most. And Ladyboy things is a tool, and I know it's a tool because it changed my perspective when I was over there. It blew my mind. And still to this day, every time I see a Ladyboy, when I see her naked body and then I see a penis, it's like the penis doesn't turn me on because I'm genuinely not homosexual, but it's like I can't stop looking at this person and just it's like I don't get it. I'm confused, but I'm excited confused. Like, trying to figure it out. It's like most people playing a video game the same level their entire life, and then all of a sudden you get to a new level and there's new characters, and new interesting things, and more color in your life. And I don't want everybody else to go out there to go sleep with ladyboys, although they should have some experience about it someday. But if you can be that, if you can take something that taboo and make something change your perspective like that, then what other things do we have prior judgments about that could change and then enrich our lives more? So that's how I use it as a tool.
It's a great mindset.
Yeah.
Well, that was possibly one of the most unexpected intros we've ever had on the podcast.
Well, I think that intro, though, for anybody who has not followed Dr. Tony Huge before, I think they have a pretty good idea now of who's answering the questions that are coming up.
Incredible.
That was good. Well, Eric, you'll have your work cut out for you getting sound bites that aren't going to get removed on Instagram for this one.
Yeah. I got to say, like, I obviously have seen you on Instagram, and, like, I've actually been in multiple group chats where people have, like, sent your stories, and I think, you're really funny. But, like, after this now, like, you have a true fan. Like, I think that everything you just said is absolutely incredible.
You just went over the kernel.
Incredible.
Did you understand the context now?
Yes.
And a lot of people are going to see one thing I post, and they're going to think I'm evil, that I'm trying to convince kids to use steroids, things like these, the haters. But once you watch enough of it and you start understanding the underlying theme I am really trying to open people's minds to, I think the world would be a lot better place if people just took these tools and understood the context. So that's good. We're giving them
you know,
context.
you're asking people to open their minds, which is always a good thing. You know, when I was competing, and you've probably heard many bodybuilders say the same thing, I kept my mouth shut because I was so in fear that I would say something that would make the judges upset with me, that would make me not place well. And then finally, when I retired, I kind of just started saying whatever I want. And I noticed that people started liking me more and more. And I said, well, I've actually been holding all this stuff in for years. How would I have known that this was okay to the fans? Now, I don't know that the judges would have liked it. Now, it doesn't really matter because I sponsor all the events anyway. So, of course, they're going to be nice to me. But, you know, what really got me talking more and more, because in the beginning, you know, whenever you're putting yourself out there as, you know, somebody that was big, that has any knowledge of steroids, especially I was coaching so many people, you know, people are going to ask you about steroids. That's just the way it is. But in the beginning, I was a little fearful, like, am I going to get in trouble for putting this information out? And what kind of changed me was, and some people will look at this positive and some people will look at this negative. What kind of changed me was Rich Piana. And the reason that changed me was people loved how open he was, and he was considered the quote-unquote realist. And I had met him a couple times, and you know, I don't have any issues with him, but I felt that he put out a lot of incorrect information, a lot of poor information. It was compelling me to put out what I felt was the right information, because all I've ever really wanted for everybody else out there at the end of the day was for them to be happy about their bodies, because that was what my mission was always about. You know, I wanted to be happy with the body that I had. I think many of us will probably never be happy, which makes us work so hard, but I wanted to make sure that I could help everybody else be happy with their body, but I wanted them to be safe. And there's a lot of people that say, well, you're immediately not safe when you're using steroids, but that's just because the public has such a poor misconception of what these different performance enhancing drugs are. And so I would like to be as open as possible about it, because not only do I have many years of practical use behind me, but I get my blood work done religiously, and I treat myself almost as if I'm my own experiment. So I often get my blood test done probably conservatively 6 times a year, you know, and I often like to see the changes of different things that I'm doing, and I've kept my own data for years, and I don't know how much true data is being compiled out there on this stuff. So I feel that my stuff is a pretty good gauge of what can be true. And you know, I never ever say to anybody that I ever want to diagnose anything. I'm not a doctor. I'm simply telling you from things that I have done and people in my circle have done. These are the examples of the results that you're going to get. And now we're starting to have more doctors that know more. I have a couple really, really good HRT doctors in my circle. And, you know, all it takes is the right voice to get this going. The problem is, the biggest problem, and I'm sure you'll agree with me on this, is there's nobody on Congress that wants to open their mouth in a positive way about any of this. And that's why, you know, we've got our, Blackstone Labs has gotten our ass kicked by the FDA for a couple of years now. And my partner, Jared Wheat, has been battling the FDA for many, many years. And it's a shame because, like I said earlier, all we're trying to do is give people good workouts. And, you know, without going off on the FDA and wasting everybody's time now, you know, that's something that really needs to change. But there's got to be people like Dr. Tony Huge. You know, I don't know that people are going to respect me, but I like to think that some of them do, and I'm going to always have my opinion on it. There needs to be more of us, though.
Yeah, so that's exactly one of the reasons I started publishing videos on this kind of thing, and I started with something extreme like DNP and research chemicals, because even DNP, all of these things are drugs that can all be used safely and then increase the quality of our life or cure diseases.
Well, DNP was sold legally at one point.
Yeah, and I heard you mention GHB on your I've been listening to your live morning cardio sessions sometimes.
Thank you.
You share a lot of really good information. I'm surprised. I was surprised how blunt you are and how truthful you are about a lot of stuff. It's really cool.
I appreciate that. I've unfortunately been pretty sick this whole week, so my cardio Q&As are down a little bit, but I'll have them back next week. GHB has always been to me, well, I've had good experiences with different drugs over the years and bad experiences with different drugs, but GHB was, I found to be the most universally liked by bodybuilders, because I think that most bodybuilders don't want to drink too much alcohol, although I almost killed myself a year ago doing that. And I think that many bodybuilders were using it as a sleep aid, which it will put you into nice deep sleep. I always felt that when I was using GHB consistently, that I felt that I noticed a good fat burning thermogenic effect from it too. And you just don't ever see it. It was popular when I started, and when I was out in LA, very easy to get because it's very popular in the gay bodybuilding scene. And I had a bunch of gay clients that I used to get it from all the time. And once I moved to Florida, people don't even know what it is. So it's something that, like, everybody that I ask, half of them don't even know what it is, which is a shame. And I don't even know, where to start. You said that you'd have some information for us. I'm curious of what you have to say about GHB.
Well, I have GHB. I have a prescription for it. It's called Xyrem is the prescription name for it. And funny thing is, it tastes and looks and smells. We have a smell. It seems exactly like the underground stuff.
And it's called Xyrem?
Yeah.
And they prescribe that in the United States?
Yeah, it's not easy to get, but jump through some hoops. It took me about a year to finally get it.
How do you spell
it? XYREM. So I use it. I don't use it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely not addicting. That's for sure. Like there's certain drugs that people say are addicting that are absolute. GHB is not an addicting drug.
Yeah.
After you use it, you're like, I'm good.
Yep.
I don't need it anymore. I'm whatever, rested, whatever effect you got from it, and then you're like, I don't want it for a little while. Same way I feel with Kratom, actually.
I'm a big Kratom advocate. I've been using Kratom for 3 years, actually. So Kratom has had the most profound effect on me. I have chronic pain in certain areas just from foolishly wrecking myself between football, powerlifting, and bodybuilding over the years. So very bad arthritis in my right shoulder. My back's pretty messed up, which is common for most people that lifted heavy. And I do a pretty healthy dose of CBD extract. I do full spectrum CBD, which I feel is the only one that I've noticed anything from. But it definitely helps my anxiety a lot, but I don't know that it's helped my pain the way that Kratom has. So I have Kratom every morning when I wake up before I go to the gym, and I can train longer, harder, less pain. And it also puts me in a good mood. I feel like it makes me focus better. And I've been using Kratom for about 3 years consistently now. So it's a shame that that's another one that they want to get rid of.
That's what bothers me so much. Like when I started the DMP diaries in the beginning, which those videos are gone now. A lot of the videos I did are gone because of censorship and just too much risk and liability. But there's still remnants. But I did the DMP series because I was researching about it, and I found just from my research that I didn't believe all the negativity that was said about it. And I felt like it just felt exactly like what I knew. As a lawyer, I've been highly trained to parse between true facts and facts intended to mislead. And everything I saw about DNP seemed to be low credibility, misleading information trying to scare us away from it. Mm-hmm. So that's when I started saying, hey, I'm going to experiment, see if it can be used healthfully, get my blood work done, do a diary series, and then use that as the most extreme example, because there's no compound that's more hated other than fentanyl probably now on the internet other than DNP. So if I can prove DNP, people are wrong about DNP and open their minds about that, then imagine all these people that were closed-minded. I've just opened up their mind. They can't help but question what else they are wrong about, which opens up the door for things like Kratom and GHB and all these other wonderful drugs that have incredible health benefits. I mean, well, Kratom is gets people off opiates.
Absolutely.
Every kind of addiction is a painkiller. It replaces billions of dollars worth of pharmaceuticals. And then you have the FDA, who's the henchman of the pharmaceutical industry, not interested in our health, not interested in our well-being, not interested in us pioneering our own human evolution through chemistry, only interested in protecting the profits of these big companies that don't have our best interest in mind. And so there's got to be us little guys who are telling the truth about these compounds, even despite being up against censorship, because it's very hard to get content out there that praises these drugs that have benefits because you get censored. So that's why, like, when we do a podcast like this, I'm really grateful for another platform to be able to express my political views about medical freedom and try to open up people's mind not to believe something negative they hear about a drug online, because it's probably being perpetuated by people who don't have the reader's best interest in mind. Absolutely.
And we're happy to have someone like yourself on here to speak this way, because it needs to be done. it's a shame that I don't know, maybe if we're lucky in our lifetime, we'll see something really positive happen, but it's going to take a lot of work.
Yeah, I'm going to start some kind of political movement. I've already got some political consultants looking into it, trying to pick what is the lowest entry point that we could get in to try and start changing, loosening up the laws, basically, to allow more ingredients to be able to be used in the supplement industry, to allow research chemicals to be experimented with by individuals instead of being controlled by the pharmaceutical companies who get to decide what we're allowed to have. So once that happens, then I'll let you know, because then we could leverage all our audiences and see if we can make a real change, even if it's a small start.
What year did you start Enhanced Athlete?
I guess it was Enhanced Athlete started right after I retired as a lawyer, pretty much. So I guess that was 3.5 years ago.
Okay. So the reason I ask is because, looking at the products that you're behind, you have some good and very interesting products out there. But when I started Blackstone Labs in 2012, we were a pro-hormone company. And, fortunately for Blackstone Labs, I was paying very close attention to what was going on with legislation, and I knew that they were going to pass the designer hormone bill in 2014. So December of 2014 was the last month that I ever sold quote-unquote designer pro hormones, which was pretty much all of my products at that point. However, I was game planning for what to do after the ban, because I knew that most of my competition was going to go down. And a buddy of mine, Anthony Roberts, and I had been speaking for a while about Estrogen. And so we came out with, as soon as the ban hit, the next day we released our product, OstaRx. And it became our most popular product. And then we wound up doing a couple other SARMs. And basically we put ourselves in a really good spot, because most of the market had fallen off because all they were selling was pro hormones, and we didn't really have much competition. So my old original partner, who owns Iron Mag Labs, Robert DiMaggio, was doing the same thing. He started selling SARM products as well. And really it was kind of just us back then. And this douchebag, who I probably shouldn't say his name because he's sued me numerous times over the years, decided to sue us. Typical ambulance chaser. You've probably dealt with this guy before too. He basically makes his living suing people, and certain people he finds ways to get class action lawsuits against, but he went after us hard for the SARMs. And at the time, we were only in business for a few years. I was nervous and I didn't want to fight back then. So I actually wound up settling for, I think, like a couple $100,000, which sucked. And I agreed to never sell SARMs ever again. Well, that same guy tried to sue DiMaggio at Iron Mag Labs. Iron Mag Labs fought and beat him. And man, I was kicking myself for years after that, because I didn't know that we could have won. I would have fought and kept going, because we had some really, really hot products. So now, I see some other companies like yours, for instance, that are selling some good SARMs, and people say to me, PG, why don't you put out some SARM products? And I tell them I truthfully can't. I legally actually cannot sell SARMs ever again because of that lawsuit.
Yeah. Enhanced Athlete's currently in the lawsuit with, and it's covers it in the documentary a lot of video from the deposition and all that. But yeah, Enhanced Athlete's still in that lawsuit, but pretty much kicking his ass every step of the way. So yeah, the attorney that files these ambulances
are his initials KS.
Yeah, that's one of the three conspirators.
He's such a dick, isn't he? I've beat him now a couple years now that I have a good attorney, and I'm not afraid of punks like that. And then there's the other one. We'll just say the letter K, who's a pain in the ass too. But now, ever since I partnered up with Jared, it's funny how the bullies that are the typical little punk bullies, it's funny how they disappear when somebody who's a real badass comes around. Because ever since I partnered up with Jared Wheat, who owns High Tech Pharmaceuticals, they won't even try to come near us now, because Jared has mopped the floor with most of these guys. And, they leave us alone. But in the beginning, when we were smaller, they figured, let's just keep suing these guys and making their lives hell over every little thing that we possibly can. So I like to see people fight back. Now that we are where we are, we're busy fighting the FDA. I don't have time to fight somebody like that. But I hope that you do kick their ass, because it's a shame. It really is.
Yeah, the payday is going to be when the countersuit comes to sue them for malicious prosecution after enhanced athlete wins, which is what a lot of the defendants are doing right now, or turning around to sue them for malicious prosecution, because all these lawsuits that they filed and the whatever $10 million they probably made over the last 7 years of extorting supplement companies. It's all fraud.
It is. It truly is extortion. Yeah, it still bothers me the way that all went down.
Yeah. So, okay, your justice and the karma will come through in the enhanced athlete victory and there's about 10 other companies that are about to kick their ass. And what happened was once DiMaggio kicked their ass, then all the other companies realized, oh, we can fight and actually win. We thought we just had to settle based on fear. And then everybody. And so what happened with Enhanced Athlete is when Enhanced Athlete first got that demand letter, the CEO at the time, Scott, he was like, he had the same belief as me. He's like, screw them. I'll fight them all the way. I don't care how much it costs. Meanwhile, it ended up costing $600,000 to fight so far in attorney's fees.
Yeah, we know about that.
But at the time, it was like, Enhanced Athlete was actually developed to be a nonprofit. Not on the books as a nonprofit, but all the profits were to be reinvested into research and the political cause. And so this was an opportunity to reinvest that money into fighting for the little guys, which is all the other supplement companies too, that this group of people were out there screwing. And so that's what it did. Enhanced Athlete was the David versus the Goliath in the good fight. And my motivation for encouraging the fight was I, as an attorney, represented so many business owners, and my passion, who I can care most about, is entrepreneurs and business owners, and also people who want to improve their physique and all that. But really, like, what brings me to tears is when I see like a business owner that's working so hard to make their dreams come true, and then you got some ambulance chaser attorney, whether it's someone like this group or the handicap. In Sacramento here, we had a handicap guy go around and sue every business in Sacramento based on violations of I can't remember what it's called, the federal law that if the counter height isn't exactly this, or the door isn't exactly this wide, or whatever, and the guy's making millions of dollars off this blackmail, basically. And my clients, I would have to tell them, it's going to cost you $20,000 to have me beat this for you, and they're offering you $8,000 to settle. Mm-hmm. And so they all pay $8,000. This guy's just making poppers, and I was like, I really want to fight this guy, and my clients either can't afford it, or they just want to do the business decision and just pay the extortion. And I'm like, someday I am going to find a way to finance fighting one of these guys and end them for good. And here this ambulance chaser came along, and this is an opportunity to end this racket. And that's why it's worth fighting. $600,000, whatever it costs, doesn't matter. It's the principle.
Good. Well, we're in your corner. That's a good reason to fight. I hope that you get it.
Yeah. Keep doing it for the rest of us. Shit.
Well, I'm pretty damn pleased with this intro now. Might as well get into his questions.
Yeah, luckily I think we actually have answered some of the questions. Like the first question, actually you both have answered in the banter in the beginning. It was what were your first cycles? You both answered that.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
And then the only other part to that question was, Tony, at what point were you like, fuck it, and just went all out crazy with the gear?
When I went all out crazy.
I'm curious of what Dr. Tony Huge's perspective of crazy is, because I know some guys that do some serious numbers, and many national level competitors lie about what they're doing anyway. So let's hear what's one of the quote unquote crazier things that you have done.
So I always do it in terms of short experiments.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't think I've ever done like a normal 3-month cycle where I do the same dosage of the same compounds through and through. It's always because I want to run too many different experiments. Mm-hmm. I don't have enough time in my lifetime to run them all if I do long cycles. So I use short esters. I have tried megadosing SARMs, I mean, well, yeah, that's an extreme experiment. But have done megadosing steroids, and I've tried, let's say, like 2 grams of test and a gram of tren and
Ooh, gram of tren. How long did you do that for?
When I did a gram of tren, that was for a competition, and I just did it for 30 days, the last month before the competition. And I don't like the feeling of being on really high dosage steroids. I just feel ill.
Yes, me too. Especially tren really on a high dose. Really, I found it screws with my emotions a lot.
Yeah, and I just lose weight. Like I can't eat enough. Like I don't know where the food goes, but it doesn't necessarily build more muscle. But I actually look flat and like weak. It's like has the opposite effect at a certain point.
Mm-hmm.
So there definitely seemed to be a sweet spot, and also depends on the compound. But I'm super sensitive to tren. I don't experiment with tren very much anymore because it just I don't get many side effects at all from most steroids, most SARMs, but tren is one that I do get a lot of side effects from.
You know, I loved tren when I was competing. It was probably my go-to for like the last 6 to 8 weeks before my shows. I always incorporated tren. I would notice it immediately how much harder and stronger I would get. And as an adult, I tried to run some tren. Last year, I had a photo shoot set up around the time of the Olympia, and about 30 days before the shoot, I added some in, and I made it about 3 weeks. And I didn't know what was wrong with me, but I just felt so lethargic, and I was having horrible night sweats. And so I talked to the doctor, and he was like, it's got to be the tren. He's like, just get off. And I was like, man, I used to use this all the time when I was competing. And he was like, look, you're not an old man, but, you know, you're older now. Things are going to hit you differently. You know, just stick to what you're doing. So I decided, actually, about a month ago, that I wanted to run this little mini blast cycle protocol. So I wanted to do, basically what I did was I did 10 days where I did a cc of testosterone cypionate every day, and then I did 10 days of nandrolone phenylpropionate, 1 cc every day, and then I did 10 days of primobolan, 1 cc every day, and then the final 10 days was the tren phase. So I really was only doing each compound for 10 days, but I was doing a cc every day. Well, I had actually pretty impressive results happen during that, and part of it also is because I haven't run anything aggressive like that in years, and I figured it was a good time to do it. All my blood looked great. About 5 days into the tren, I got really bad insomnia. I felt very hot and tired all the time. And I noticed that, and I kind of noticed this last time too, that I would be, just driving to the gym and just start getting very angry out of nowhere. And I didn't know why. I'd be with my girlfriend and she'd be like, are you okay? And I'm like, I'm just in a really bad mood. It's nothing to do with you. I don't know why. And on the flip side, out of nowhere, I would just start getting really depressed and down where I didn't want to talk to anybody. And she actually noticed it too. She's like, you seem really depressed. And on day 7, I opted to not, I was like, let's just abandon this little protocol that I wanted to try. And about 48 hours later, I was back to normal. And so now, if I didn't learn the first time stupidly, I know that tren just doesn't agree with me anymore at all.
Yep, same side effects here. Yeah, that's why I bodybuild to increase the quality of my life, and tren just decreases.
No, that's a great line. That's true. It's funny because it's got this name, like everybody knows tren, and it's supposed to be the end all be all, but it's just the risks for me now and for many people. I have found out now through my Q&A that this happens to many people. And maybe when I was young, I was just so focused on my bodybuilding shows and I had far less going on. I had far less responsibilities. Yeah. So maybe I was just tired and driven on my workouts and didn't notice it. But boy, I notice it a lot now. So
that's what I noticed. That's what I noticed. The bodybuilders that are just focused on the bodybuilding only and they don't have a lot of stresses or complicated life, they seem to work really well with tren.
Yep.
That's commonality.
While we were on the specific topic of compounds, I wanted to actually ask you myself, what are your opinions on Trestolone, either acetate or decanate?
I've never gotten gyno faster than when using Trestolone. We're talking like 36 hours you got gyno. But it's also, I think I put on the most amount of muscle the fastest on that. There's a couple short experiments I did that I put on the muscle the fastest, and that's definitely in the top 3. It's just that estrogen builds up so fast. So if I'm going to do that again, I would actually start taking letrozole the day before
Smart.
I do my first Trestolone injection, because for some reason you can't catch up. Like I was taking letro, but it just couldn't catch up to the amount of estrogen that my body had produced. And I did my blood work on about 15 days into a Trestolone acetate cycle of 100 milligrams per day, and my estrogen was 48 times the normal. Highest. I mean, I've never seen estrogen as high as my estrogen when I ran that compound. But the estrogen is what is responsible partly for why it builds so much muscle. It just goes to show, like, you can do something similar with testosterone and running a high dose and letting a lot convert to estrogen. Although the type of estrogen that Trestolone converts to is it's the most potent form of estrogen. I forget which one, estradiol, I think.
Yes.
But yeah. So and actually, it's a modified version of estradiol, I think, that it can actually convert to. That's so potent. So imagine it's that potency, and it was that much level in my bloodstream, and that was the fastest muscle gainer that I had, which again shows how powerful estrogen is.
I ran a Trestolone and Anthate cycle for 30 days. And to be honest, the only reason I stopped it was because I just felt super bloated and watery. And I felt that it was a very, very good hard gainer, you know, hard gainer drug. Like for the guys out there that have a hard time gaining weight. I haven't really seen anybody have a hard time putting size on with this one, but that one, like you said, is a little aggressive for my taste at this point too.
Yeah, I think it's for the person who isn't responding to anything else. I think that's what you go to. Or if for some reason you're like, I'm going to do one hardcore steroid blast 1 month of my life and never take steroids again, and I want to gain as much muscle as possible, then
that's good.
But if you're doing it, take your time and do things right. Most people will never need it. But I'm glad it's there. It's fun to experiment with.
So I ask because I recently experimented with it, and I've actually taken both esters, both times without any AI or estrogen blocker or anything like that. So that just goes to show you that that's how crazy my body is, that I don't need to take it at all, and I get no side effects.
His blood work, whenever I read it, it doesn't really make sense. He's just an anomaly, though, with the way that things work for him. He doesn't have to take anything for estrogen, it seems.
What dosage were you taking?
I believe the acetate was 200, and I was taking it like every 3 days or so. And I think the Decanote one was 150 or 100. And I was just doing that one like once a week though. Yeah.
Yeah. Usually they make the acetate in 100 milligrams, but and then it's got a pretty short half-life. So you were doing it every other 2 days.
Yeah, because I was like kind of nervous because everybody was like, oh, if you take this, you're going to grow boobs immediately. So I was like, let me just take a little bit and then see how I feel. And I didn't feel anything like on day 3. So I was like, all right, let me try a little bit again. And then I started doing it like every other day. And it wasn't like literally nothing scary happened to me. So I was like, oh, this must be okay. So that's why I tried the long ester one, because I don't really like to pin that often.
So with the gyno, here's my regret. I had to do this experiment to understand this, but I kind of wish I could go back in time. You know, the first time you get gyno, then it's hard to get gyno the first time if you don't aromatize a lot. You know, like me, I'm very lean. I don't aromatize much. But then when I did get gyno the first time, when I did 1 gram of testosterone as an experiment, I was like, I want to take 1 gram of testosterone with nothing else, with no AI. I'm going to see how long I can go until I get estrogen side effects. And sure enough, I got gyno. And then forever on after that, now I can get gyno very easily. So like I warn people, you know, even if you feel like you're not aromatizing much and you feel like you don't need an AI, you got to really keep it in check. And as soon as someone feels that very first symptom, you got to nail that gyno real quick, because it just keeps growing even after you stop taking the compounds, you know.
I feel like once you've got a hard lump there, you're pretty much done. Like I got mine. It started in about late 2006, and I did North Americans in 2007. And I was running the last 4. I was running Arimidex for much of my contest prep, but the last 4 weeks, I was running Femera and Aromacin because I was trying to get this gyno to disappear at all costs. And I had basically like a marble under each nipple, and I was shredded at that show too. And I could not get that little hard bump to go away. And I remember I came off stage, and Palumbo was there with George Farah, and George Farah was like, "TJ, come here, TJ." And I was like, "Oh, it's PJ, sir." And he goes, "TJ, you're a gyno. You must get this out right now. You'll never place well with this gyno." And I was so like heartbroken over it, and I was a broke young bodybuilder. But my dad actually helped me out, and I went and I got the gyno removed after that. And then it was kind of like when you get your results to your STD test back and you're clean. And I was like, I'm going to run test and no estrogen blockers for the rest of my life. And I actually made good gains for a while. I was just more watery than usual. Then I found out later in life, once I retired, that my body is now like an estrogen factory. And the doctors were actually scared at the first time we got my blood work in back maybe 2013-ish. The doctor had said she had never even seen estrogen that high. So they put me on 1 milligram of Arimidex every other day. And I came back in, we did 1 milligram of Arimidex every other day for 30 days. And we came back in, and my estrogen at that point was about 278. And she was shocked that it was still that high. So we came back in another 30 days, and it was still in the high 100s. So we went to 1 milligram every day. Came back in another 30 days, and it was in the 70s. And we stayed at 1 milligram, and finally got it down to about 40. And so she was like, "I'm going to have to keep you on 1 milligram of Arimidex because this dosage is actually keeping you in an optimal range." So where many people may be down to single digits or even close to zero at that point, I was actually in an optimal range. So I've been running 1 milligram of Arimidex for years now, even on low HRT doses, and my estrogen is typically between about 35 and 45, right around where it should be. Unfortunately, when you run that much Arimidex, it does affect my lipid profile, and so I have to do other things to make sure that my cholesterol is in place. But it's either that or having the really excess estrogen. So this has been, up to this point, what medically I've had to do for years. And I think it's because I think I was probably just aromatizing so much after my gyno surgery, and I think I was prone to estrogen anyway, that I guess just years of, I suppose, steroid abuse, this is just like the byproduct of it.
It's helpful you shared that, because I think that this is what happened to me also. I definitely didn't aromatize much early on, and my body aromatizes a lot more now. Mm-hmm. So I think I also need to be on Arimidex more frequently, even on low dosages. So I may start doing that as well.
Yeah, I mean, give it a shot and see. You can just do your own experiment.
Yeah.
This next question says, hope you all are doing great. Just wanted to ask about your recommended Ostarine protocol for both fat loss and a bulking cycle, separate cycles. Also, I heard Cardarine gives users a yellow vision tint like phone's night mode soon after the end of a cycle. Is this true? Why, if so?
I can answer that if you want. So Ostarine was the first SARM that I experimented with, and I made awesome gains on it, and then I used it as a bridge between cycles, but between steroid cycles, and then I've tried megadosing it. What I noticed with Ostarine is I think it is one of the perfect beginner SARMs.
I love Ostarine.
Seem to have muscle building, strength building, joint tendon sort of ligament building properties. And I usually tell them to take about 20 milligrams in the morning. I tell them in the morning because it's just my theory that way blood levels are lower at night when the natural testosterone pulse happens. So I'm hoping that the HPTA feedback loop will show lower amounts of an anabolic in the bloodstream at time when your body gauges how much natural testosterone to produce. So I usually start my friends at 20 milligrams in the morning and then step up slowly over time after that, every time they feel like they're hitting a plateau. I have a lot of friends that have experimented upwards of 60, 70 milligrams, and they seem to notice the effects. Now, not all SARMs are the same way, but the effects of Ostarine seem to plateau somewhere around 40, 50 milligrams. Like, there doesn't seem to be that much of a benefit after that so far from what I've seen, but I still need to experiment more.
I always liked to do 30 milligrams of Ostarine was like my sweet spot. I've not done more than that, but I found that dose, I was very pleased with the results that I got. And I find women do great with 10 milligrams in the morning. In fact, many women actually, I found, did better with 10 milligrams of Osterine in the morning than with 10 milligrams of Anavar, which is, I love Anavar. But when we had our Osterine product, a lot of bikini competitors were using it, and I would see the transformations that their bodies would go through, and the quality that they would have. It was pretty remarkable that you could just take 10 milligram pill, and get that good of results. And I didn't really run into too many women having any virilization symptoms with that dose either.
Yeah, there's no doubt that Anavar is great, for women to build strength and stay and burn fat and build a little bit of muscle. But SARMs seem to build more, especially Osterine, but other ones as well, seem to build more muscle on women. Like they can put on more muscle size on the SARMs or Osterine than they can on Anavar, usually, in my experience. And then at 10 milligrams, you're right, very few females experience side effects, and if they do, I have them drop to 10 milligrams, because usually if it's a 10 milligram tablet or capsule, then I have them do 10 milligrams every other day, because the half-life is long enough to where doing 10 milligrams every other day is similar to doing 5 milligrams per day, and that seems to work out really good. And the other part of that question was for bulking versus cutting. I don't think it really makes a huge difference, the dosage. There's more factors, like the person's sensitivity or how much lean body mass they have, I think matters more than whether their goal is bulking or cutting, as far as what dosage of the Osterine they would take, probably.
Okay. Well, there's a Cardarine question too.
Vision? No, I've never known anybody to get yellowing of the vision from Cardarine. I think they might be referring to S4. S4 does hit the receptors in the eye and does cause vision side effects, but Cardarine does not. And I've had people megadose Cardarine. I've never heard of anybody experiencing vision side effects from Cardarine.
What's your optimal dose of Cardarine?
20 milligrams. I experimented with 10 milligrams and noticed very little benefit to my cardio capacity. At 20 milligrams, it's a very noticeable benefit. And then 30, maybe a little bit more. And then 40, no additional benefit. So it seems to me like the low end of the sweet spot is around 20 milligrams. And I don't want to take any more than necessary of that compound because of the cancer risk. I don't think there is any cancer risk at a low dosage when cycled. In fact, I think it actually could kill cancer. But I do believe that at a very high dosage and without cycling it and using it chronically, then could lead to cancer.
Oh, good answer. Good to know.
Next one says, does arachidonic acid have any side effects apart from muscle pain, and which is better compared to SARMs?
Yeah, arachidonic acid can have major side effects. I mean, all of the things you hear bad about inflammation and health, they're talking about what arachidonic acid does. So I only take enough arachidonic acid to increase the soreness in the muscles, and I try to time it, like I take it pre-workout, and then it's very noticeable. My muscles get more full, more sore, and grow more. But if you take too much, you start getting inflammation everywhere. Your joints, your tendons, your whole body aches. It's hard to get out of bed in the morning. Feels like you get hit by a truck. And that's just the inflammation you can feel. Imagine what it's doing to your organs and everything else in your body. Very unhealthy. So it's important. It's one of those supplements that more is not better. A little bit helps a lot, and then you take too much, and now you're still going to have a lot of muscle growth if you have too much inflammation, but now you're going to have side effects too. So that's why I think timing helps and keeping the dosage moderate.
All right. Next one says, what's up, y'all? Blackstone Baller here. Quick questions for Dr. Stoney Huge. Number one, did Trevor ever pay Dubber?
Yeah, well, Trevor gets looks, that's for sure. He gets looks like he should pay Dubber. So what happened is that first came along when he and I are in a subway station. In Asia, they have these trains where they just pack everybody in. And if you're an American, you're probably the only American on the train, because everybody else is just, Asian people going to work. And so Trevor's funny because he's this huge guy, massive, muscular, 260 pounds, veins popping out, tattoos, earring piercings. I mean, he looks like a badass. He's like a Rich Piana style guy, right? Mm-hmm. So, but he also cares. He's a very soft. He's like a teddy bear inside, and he cares a lot about what people think. and he doesn't, and he wants to. His etiquette is very good, things like that. So when I embarrass him on the train, and I pull up the camera and I say, "Oh, Trevor, are you too big for a train? You must pay double. You take up too much room on the train. Must pay double to ride train," in the Asian accent. And then all these Asians know that I'm making fun of him, or them basically, because I'm, butchering their Asian accent. So that's how it started. And then I keep joking with him about that everywhere we go, about how he has to pay dubber. and it's just so funny because it embarrasses him so much. And so I get great pleasure from that.
That's great.
His second question is, can microdosing mushrooms with peak checks, will my upper chest shelf be like yours and Craig's?
Oh, you know what? Okay, so he's throwing in some funny lines from there. So you got Craig Goliath, one of the biggest guys around.
Yeah, he's a monster.
He always does the peak check where he asks, strangers to give him a peak check, flex their bicep. And then we got the upper chest shelf, the hardest muscle to develop, that he's got a really good upper chest shelf, and I'm injecting my upper chest shelf all the time to get bigger too. So we got a little upper chest shelf competition going. And then they threw in the mushrooms because they know that I'm experimenting with the mushrooms. And if we had the video going right now, I would show you some of my mushrooms. But
damn,
I'm going to resume dosing the magic mushrooms again for nootropic benefits. Yes.
Oh, well, we'd have to definitely do a follow-up then for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, this next one says, hello, Mr. Huge and PJ. I listened to your podcast the other day with Mark Bell. I remember you talking about how the government controls us by not letting us inject ourselves with hormones legally, but are letting transgender people do it. You talked about living free from the government. So my question to you is, do you believe the government is lying to us about certain things, such as the moon landing and the Earth being a planet? I consider myself to be a woke individual and have spent many years researching not just flat Earth, but a geocentric Earth, an Earth with a sun and a moon revolving around it inside of a glass dome with no actual such thing as space. It may sound crazy, but the more research I do, the more I come closer to this conclusion. There are no actual pictures of a satellite or Earth. They are all photoshopped. Have you ever researched a geocentric Earth or listened to Eric Dubé's studies on this topic? Do you think that the government and high-ups such as the Rockefellers and Rothschilds know the truth and are hiding it from us for all of their benefit? I just wanted to bring a different sort of topic to the podcast to bring a different spin onto things. And also, since you like to mention freedom a lot, I would like your take. Sincerely, that one woke guy.
Okay, so the timing of this is really funny because I just watched the documentary on Flat Earth. 2 days ago? I mean, and I never intended to watch it. It just started playing on Netflix because you know how you flip through Netflix and then all of a sudden something just starts playing.
Yes.
In the background. And it actually captivated me. It was very interesting to watch. I really liked the documentary. I don't think it wasn't called Flat Earth, but the whole documentary was about Flat Earth. So just first, PJ, have you heard about this Flat Earth thing?
I have. We actually had one of our one of my muscle boys, which is what we call the guys in my call center, believed so much in the flat Earth theory that he got into a fight with the round Earth muscle boys, and he eventually he quit. I think actually, you know who I'm talking about, right?
Not because of that.
No, that's not why. Okay.
No, he quit because of Bitcoin.
He quit because of Bitcoin.
And then, I mean, he's back with us now.
Yeah, but does he still believe?
Not only does he still believe it, but he also believes a plethora of other unbelievable things that sometimes I walk in to his portion of the office and I just try to see what crazy shit he'll say.
So I am not for the flat Earth personally. My grandfather actually helped design the Hubble Space Telescope, and he actually did a lot of stuff that was classified, and some of it actually in the past 10 years or so has been declassified. Some of it being the stuff that he did with the Hubble Space Telescope and NASA, and so I believe my grandfather. I don't think he's lying to me on the stuff that he's done and shooting that telescope up there to take all the pictures that it takes. So I am pro round Earth. I'm against the flat Earth.
I also, to follow up, I was just talking to Brandon the other day, and he actually told me that he's not saying necessarily that it's totally flat, but he can tell you that it's not round.
We love you, by the way, Brandon. I wasn't
We
saying
do.
Josh said your name. I guess if you listen to the show, you're going to know I was talking about you anyway. So
I don't think he cares. I think if you DM him, he'll be glad to go back and forth with you.
Okay.
He's very strong in his beliefs.
No, I'll keep my answer as short as I can, but it's an interesting question that I could spend hours responding to, not because I know much about flat Earth, but just the psychology behind it and just the physics of how things in our reality work. So my first reaction when someone says that, what I'd love to know is I'd love to do like a survey and see what my fans or people that know about me would think that I would think about flat Earth. I'd be really curious. I wonder if they think that I'm a conspiracy theorist about everything, or if I'm judgmental about everything. But this will give everybody a much better insight into how I think about things. When someone says the Earth is flat, I actually don't pass very much judgment. Mm-hmm. I don't jump to say, no, it's not, it's round, or, oh, wow, it's flat. Oh, get obsessed about it. It's kind of like the information just flows over me. And then I think, okay, is the information relevant to me, my goals, and my quality of life? Or is it something that's going to change my perspective that could change my goals or my quality of life? And I don't think that whether or not the Earth is round or flat is going to impact my mission, my goals, or really change my perspective that much. Now, there are many other conspiracy theories out there that I do believe are true that do have a direct impact on my life. And they all seem to be financially, all the conspiracy theories that I've discovered to be true were financially, there was a financial motive behind it. And I don't know what the financial motive behind the flat Earth theory is, but that's where I would start. I would say, okay, if you're telling me the Earth is flat, why would they try to cover it up, and what is the financial gain from it? And then I could then I could understand it better. Because when it also in that question was talking about other government conspiracies that I do know to be true, and it was all financially motivated, and it's very easy once you just follow the money, and then you also understand human psychology, and you combine the money and the human psychology, then it's all predictable. It's no longer even a conspiracy. It's like, oh yeah, that's just human nature, and that's just how money works, and that's just how the world works. And that's where I've ended with the United States government, the FDA, people who have financial interest in the United States government, and other governments of the world. And one of the reasons I like traveling so much, or one of the reasons I like also being a polygamist and having multiple girlfriends, is I like to challenge my own perception of reality. That's one of my favorite things to do. So when I travel to other countries, it gives me a completely different insight on humanity and perspective on what my own upbringing and my own life. And then when I date other girls, each time I'm with another girl, I get to be a little bit different person because I get to explore the world through their perspective. So I think that helps people. Doesn't give them, I think, the answer on whether flat Earth is real or not, or the conspiracy are real or not, but it allows them to understand my thought process around it, and which I would apply to any conspiracy theory.
I would say that's a good answer that no one can be offended by.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that for sure. Like in the end of the question, it says, do you believe they're hiding it from us for all of their benefit? And you basically answered it by saying, if you can show me what the benefit would be of telling us that we have a flat Earth, then I'd be more interested in diving more into this. Absolutely. But I'm right there with you. Even if we are walking around on like a triangle right now, it's not going to change how heavy 200 pounds is for me. So
there you go.
Oh, and this is also a good example of there are so many things in our life that we can change, and to be worried about something that we cannot change is futile.
Absolutely, good point.
Yeah, let's summarize it.
All right, next one says, hey, Dr. Huge, while on TRT at 200 milligrams of test sip a week, I am taking 1 milligram of Arimidex daily for existing gyno lumps and prevention of them getting worse, and simple estrogen control. Wouldn't it be wise to just take something like Rolaxifene instead, due to the sides of a DEX-like heightened lipid panel or crashing estrogen levels to low? And from some readings, I understand it prevents some 5A activity, which DHT is essential to, whereas Rolax or Tamox or even Clomid only deal with estrogen alone. Thanks, Dylan.
Okay, so let me try to extract some parts of that. I didn't catch like 3/4 of the way through. But so raloxifene, tamoxifen, tormophene, clomiphene, these are the four main selective estrogen receptor modulators that block the estrogen. They attach to the estrogen receptor, but they give a null signal to most estrogen receptors. Actually, some estrogen receptors, they act like estrogen. But for the most part, they give a null signal. So they block the receptor so the blood levels of estrogen don't change, but the effectiveness of the estrogen on the receptor does change. So he's currently using Arimidex, which is an aromatase inhibitor, which blocks the conversion of testosterone and estrogen in the first place. And especially when only taking 200 milligrams of test per week, that's pretty low. Mm-hmm. I would much prefer, if I had to be using an aromatase inhibitor, because then also my testosterone levels are going to be higher.
Absolutely.
I mean, because the doctor's probably not going to give him much more tests than that. So we got to make do. We got to make use of the test that we got.
Yep.
We don't want to convert to estrogen then block it. What a waste of good testosterone.
My doctor does not like to prescribe tamoxifen. He will, but with an HRT, the protocol you're supposed to be doing, you should be fine with anastrozole or Arimidex over the tamoxifen. You shouldn't want to have it blunted like that. You need a little bit of that estrogen present. So.
Yeah, and then tamoxifen also, when it blocks the estrogen receptors, it also blocks estrogen receptors that create satellite cells, which could lead to new muscle cells and hyperplasia. Yep. So it could potentially limit some muscle growth. And so he's worried about lipids. So just like you, PJ, actually, so the follow-up question for you would be, since you are on, like we discussed, 1 milligram of Arimidex every day, and you said you have to do things to offset the impact on your lipid profile, what are those things that you do? Because this person may want to incorporate those.
So I supplement with a very high quality EFA and fish oil product that I get through my doctor. And I'm not saying that there's no place for, regular, GNC, I guess we'll say, fish oils, but there's better quality stuff out there that will have a pretty impressive effect on your lipid profile when you take them properly and get them done. I take fairly high doses of mine too. So I typically do anywhere from depending on what I'm doing, 6 to 9 grams of supplemental high quality fish oils a day. And I use 400 milligrams of ubiquinol. So there's a few things that I do to, I guess, combat what's happening to my heart from the anastrozole. I also take extra N-acetylcysteine. So there's things that I do that I feel help out. And I also believe personally, and there's not really any true study on this, but I've talked about it with my doctor, and she agrees as well. I believe that taking glutathione as often as I do has a positive effect on the lipid profile, because when you're talking about the heart, what's one of the main things that will attack the heart is free radicals. And so you're taking, the most powerful antioxidant known to man that's going to, be going after those free radicals in your body. So I believe that there is an indirect effect from the glutathione, although people typically are taking it for liver detoxification. I think that it absolutely has a positive effect on the lipid profiles. My numbers have gotten steadily better in that area based on supplementing with those things.
What's your HDL?
So my last blood work, my total number is never over 200, which a lot of people think that, if you're over 200, this is so bad. It's really the ratio, which is more important. So my last one, my numbers were 37 and 90, which is not too bad because my ratio is still only around 3-1 there. So I'd like to have, when I was competing, this is a pretty, it's scary to see numbers like this. When I was competing, that number was in the single digits. And I don't know how low you've seen, on people's blood works before, but that was actually fairly common with a lot of the bodybuilders that I've been working with over the years. And when doctors see that, they're blown away, because if you take your normal, individual that's not taking steroids and even eating, McDonald's and all these other bad things a day, they're still not going to have numbers like that. So that's a scary one when you see that. So I've always been aware of that and been supplementing in some way. I wouldn't say I've ever had HDL, LDL numbers to be proud of. But they're at least they're not in a horrible spot right now. It is still something that is a bit of a concern to me, though.
This will be one of my future research assignments to find which compounds can actually reverse atherosclerosis also, because, if we do have lipid profile that's off, our HDL's too low, our LDL's too high, and an accumulation on the arterial walls of plaque, then is there something that can reverse it? They think that pomegranate extract might be able to do that. So I take a pomegranate extract, even though I had no way to really experiment with it or know, but just the science says that might work.
I may start doing that too then, so I appreciate you telling me that.
Yeah, I had 7 HDL was my lowest on full-blown gear, and now it's usually around 14. But my HDL has always been low. My HDL before I ever did gear was only 30. It was always under 40.
Did they want you to do anything medically, to combat that?
Well, they offer me statins and things.
Yep.
But
statins will kill you too. That's the sad thing.
Yeah. So I prefer not to take the statins. I mean, when I deep researched LDL and HDL, the amount of HDL seemed to be a lot less significant than we seem to think in the mainstream. So I became less concerned with it when I did my deep research. I became concerned about the inflammation and other things that contribute to it as well. So like sugar, for example. Well, here's a good example of being concerning ourselves with what's really relevant and really has a bigger impact, and not worrying about the sensationalist stuff, is like our blood glucose levels is one of the biggest determining factors of our health. And so I still eat a lot of sugar, and I still eat garbage food sometimes, and that concerns me more than my LDL and HDL, and yet I'm still eating garbage food. So like for me, I'm going to concern myself more with cleaning up my diet and healthy lifestyle before I start worrying too much about the side effect of taking an anastrozole and having my estrogen go a little bit lower, and then having my HDL decrease as a result.
You'll find this interesting. I actually told this story on the podcast before. So I was on a flight back from LA. I sat next to a cardiologist, and he was very into fitness, which oftentimes isn't the case. And he was a fairly muscular guy, and he started asking me about bodybuilding and whatnot. And so he was an open heart surgeon, and that was pretty much all he did these days. And so this guy had been studying the heart from every angle for his whole life. And he said he had a case where they had a young man that was about 31 years old who abused steroids and recreational drugs so bad that he was on a heart transplant list. And they had basically told him, you're most likely not going to make it to the transplant. And so they actually megadosed him in the meantime on 1,500 milligrams a day of ubiquinol. And he said after 30 days, he showed a marked increase. And so they decided to keep documenting this experiment with him. And he wasn't set to get a transplant, for, best case scenario, a couple more months. And so they were like, listen, odds are you're not going to make it, but please stay on the protocol. You've actually showed some improvement. In 90 days, he said that he actually got taken off the transplant list because of the effect that it had that positive on his heart. And he said, now this is obviously a particular case. This isn't something that we have studied to prove will happen, to anybody or everybody. But he said because of that, he immediately put everybody in his family on, depending on whether they were male or female, 200 to 400 milligrams of ubiquinol a day. And he said, for you as a bodybuilder, I'm sure you're probably using anabolic steroids. He's like, I would suggest you supplement with 400 milligrams of ubiquinol a day. And ever since then, I've been taking ubiquinol. That was a few years ago.
All right, I'm going to up my dosage.
Yeah, I was actually taking 200 milligrams at the time. And he said, no, if you're using anabolic steroids, take 400 milligrams a day. And he truly believed that it saved that guy's life. And they had been doing more testing, he said, on it after that. And that was probably a good 3-4 years ago that I met that guy. He was a very interesting guy on the plane. So
the right, cool. I'm going to dose, yeah. The other thing I do to protect my heart, not necessarily my vascular system, but my heart itself, is sometimes I take nebivolol, which is a beta blocker.
Mm-hmm.
Bistolic is I think Bistolic is the generic name. But that's a beta blocker that just makes the heart work less hard and get less stimulation. And especially if I'm going to take a lot of stimulants,
Mm-hmm.
then I take a nebivolol so that the stimulants can have effect in the rest of my body, but without taxing my heart too much.
Smart.
All right, this next question actually is in slight relation to the question that I had asked earlier about the ment. It says, "Hey PJ, so glad you got Tony on. You guys are two of the smartest people I know when it comes to PEDs. So this question is for both of you. If Trestolone, aka ment, is so much stronger than test, while increasing libido and not converting to DHT, why not just run that? Also, through what mechanism does it increase libido if it doesn't convert to DHT? Looking forward to hearing from you both. Keep defending freedom. Peace out. Bye, Eric."
Tony, you want to answer?
I don't, okay, so some steroids make you feel like a trend, makes you feel isolated and depressed and, not wanting to be around people. Yeah, Ment was one of the steroids, kind of like D-ball, that gives you a better sense of well-being. You feel more social. You feel more confident. I don't know that my sex drive increased on it, though. But it does convert to estrogen. Estrogen does increase in estrogen, does increase sex drive up to a certain point. So that might also have something to do with it.
I noticed a massive sex drive increase on
it.
it.
You did?
I don't remember, to be honest with you.
Oh yeah, it reminded me of Tren, very much of Tren.
See, my last Tren experience was so bad. My experience with Trestolone was pretty positive. I put a lot of size on fast, but I was still running testosterone with it. Personally, I would never not run testosterone. So people often ask me what's the the smartest thing or the safest thing to do if you can only do one thing. And a lot of your beginners that are afraid to stick themselves, they'll just jump to Anavar, right? But to me, the safest and smartest thing to do is just run a low dose of testosterone, because as men, the way I always describe it, just in a way that everybody can understand, is testosterone is what makes you a man. So depending on what you're doing with your testosterone levels, you're essentially going to be more of a man. And a little bit more testosterone is going to make you a little bit more of a man. You're going to be a little bit stronger. You'll get a little bit bigger. You're going to have more, sexual aggression. You're going to feel good. And I base anything else that I do around the fact that I want that good base of testosterone at all times. I wouldn't remove it just because something is far more androgenic. Just because something is far more androgenic property to it doesn't mean that it's going to give you the better results. It oftentimes, like Tony says, can have psychological effects and make you not feel good. So I always feel good on testosterone. The thing with testosterone is, let's say you do 300 milligrams a week of testosterone. Well, 300 milligrams a week of testosterone is always going to give you what you get out of 300 milligrams of testosterone. It's gonna, if you do it for the rest of your life, you'll consistently feel good and get the gains that you want to get out of that 300 milligrams of testosterone. So I don't feel that it's something that, I think we can all play around with different doses, like Tony said when he did some high dose stuff when he was younger, like I did too. And sometimes, you do your little blast protocols where you throw stuff in. But for the most part, if the idea is to improve well-being, improve your physique, improve who you are as a person, when you find that right protocol, then you should stick with it and run little short experiments here and there, not try to replace it with something that could be optimal, and then set yourself back when you start getting perhaps not optimal side effects.
Yeah, but by default, testosterone is reliable. It's well experimented on. It's well understood. It's easy to keep your blood levels stable because you have so many different esters to choose from. And it's available anywhere you go, any country, whatever, by prescription or over the counter, depending. So it makes a great foundation. But then I did do experiments where I took testosterone out completely, and then I tried high dosages of certain compounds to see. And the Trestolone was one of them. And now I'm thinking back to the sexual effects, whether I had a higher sexual desire or lower, or that dropped off completely. And I'm thinking back to this question that you asked. And I think what he's thinking is, if you took out testosterone completely, now you've got nothing to convert to DHT, then how is Trestolone able to maintain a libido when it doesn't convert to DHT?
Correct.
And I guess the answer is, I guess your body doesn't need DHT for libido. I mean, I guess the Trestolone acts the same way that DHT does for the libido purposes, but I've experienced this with other compounds too, and it goes all the way to defining what SARMs are as well, because SARMs are selective androgen receptor modulators that are intended to affect the muscle tissue more than other tissue, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have any effect on other tissue. You can still actually have no testosterone in you whatsoever and use a SARM and still have sex drive, because at a high enough dosage, that SARM is also going to have enough binding affinity to the receptors in your body that affect sex drive. So the Trestolone is basically replacing the DHT for that sex drive effect.
That makes perfect sense, yeah. Most see, with DHT, people are often afraid to mess with DHT because things like finasteride that reduce DHT, most guys say that they get erectile dysfunction on it.
Yeah, what I don't understand, what's a curious thing about that is they have this when they take finasteride and they crash their DHT, and they come off the finasteride thinking their DHT, and their DHT does come back, but their sex drive still doesn't come back, and it's called post-finasteride disorder or something like that. And I don't understand why, but that seems to damage people's sex drive permanently in some cases, the lack of DHT. So I guess that's a risk someone needs to know. It's not happened in my experience with as you saw with the men, your Trestolone, your sex drive went up also, and yet that you would be taking the risk of eliminating DHT and therefore potentially having some after effect of lower sex drive, although I haven't seen that to be the case.
Yeah, the first time that I used the acetate version, I wanted to try it without test like you, because somebody else had told me that you should run it without test. So I was like, that sounds crazy and like crap, like what PJ thinks about just at least having a basic test. But I was like, I'm going to try it. Why not? So I tried it without test, and I noticed that like my sex drive was at least as high as it was taking test and tren, if not higher. And then the second time that I took it, I just took it with test just because. And sex drive is even crazier. It's like it just doesn't. It's like there's no stop.
I feel like the wind changes and your sex drive goes up, though.
Yeah, it's true.
So
there's one last case study. There was a guinea pig of mine who went on a long cycle of Trestolone at a very low dosage, something like 20 milligrams per day for multiple months to see if it would have the same effect as testosterone. And he couldn't tell the difference between doing 20 milligrams of testosterone or doing 300 milligrams of test per week. At the end, he said it had felt like the same thing to him. He didn't feel any side effects.
Yeah, so far I really like it. I think it's cool. For me, for somebody who doesn't have estrogen side effects, like I can't cause myself to have estrogen side effects if I try. So, I mean, it's cool for me.
At the end, we're all not physiologically equal, so different things are going to work differently for different people. You have to find what works best for you. If you're having good results, I wouldn't tell you to stop.
No, and I really like the pumps.
That is such an important point too, and that like every time anybody talks about PEDs or anything, that they have to say it's so individually specific.
Yes, absolutely.
Because otherwise, people don't understand. They think they can do the same thing someone else doesn't have the same effect, and that's what anybody who says anything bad about steroids too, they have to disclaim it by saying, and there's a lot of people who took steroids that never got any side effects, and they're really glad they took them.
Right, exactly.
There you go.
This next one says, why does Tony insist on wearing gloves while he trains?
They're very perceptive. They notice. I'm the only one of all my friends that wears gloves, actually, so I get so much crap about it. Because I want to keep my hands smooth. I don't like getting calluses and stuff. And there's also, I guess, when I really, really started is when I had access to like rusty weights, and I really got in the habit of it. So like traveling through Asia in some of these places where it's very humid, or you're training at a gym that's near the ocean, some of the weights can get a little bit rusty. And I have this phobia of like little shards of rust or metal or something getting stuck in my palm. It's like a pet peeve from getting slivers, wood slivers. You ever get a wood sliver, PJ, as a kid?
So fun.
So I have this paranoia that I'm like, something's going to get stuck in my hand, or also like cleanliness. Like so many people touch the bar. I know that sounds like, OCD, but I just feel like the same reason why you wear pants. I guess. Or
do you wash your gloves?
Yeah, I wash them, and I don't necessarily wear them all the time. I probably wear them 80% of the time, and I just wash them, and I also get new gloves frequently.
You know, I'll tell you, in the era that I grew up in bodybuilding with the 90s, they all wore gloves back then. In the beginning, I did wear gloves too, and it really just was a matter of, I think, just losing them all the time as I got older. Same thing with wrist straps. I used wrist straps when I was younger too, and I'd just lose them, or I'd have one and not have the other one, and I'm not going to just wrap one side. So I got more basic, I guess, with how I took care of my hands as I got older. But I have actually dated girls before that really didn't like the calluses. And I just told them, too fucking bad. It is what it is. And then I actually dated a girl that enjoyed picking my calluses off, which was also pretty annoying. So, you probably have better hands than most of the guys out there.
Yeah, that's right. I've got smoother hands. But they don't want, I try to tell them that, but they don't want it. They like the calluses.
Every now and then those calluses, they can get, you get the little pieces that come out and they're sharp. Yeah. And if you're jerking off and you don't have the right lube, you can slice yourself with it.
Or God forbid, you just go to scratch yourself or something and just slice yourself.
Well, the one place you definitely don't want to slice yourself is down there.
That's what I'm saying. You get one of them extra hard little calluses. Next one says,
I think the government should legalize steroids and then also make it a rule, just like wearing seatbelts. You got to wear seatbelts or you got to wear gloves in the gym.
I think that we would see a decrease in fitness users. They'd be like, wait, I could take this test, but I've got to wear these gloves? Nah, fuck it.
The seatbelt law is always one that gets me.
Yeah, nobody wears their seatbelt.
No. I noticed the Australians who are in the room, they put on their seatbelts when they're in the car.
Oh.
Yeah. We'll talk about that maybe on the next podcast.
Very safe. Next one says, what's up, guys? As a continued drug-free bodybuilder, they make Tony out to be a huge gear user. With that being said, is he cruising right now, or is he still trying to put size on? Legion loyal forever, Blackstone Labs, Michael Powers.
Yeah, so if I was a huge gear user and I was trying to be a professional bodybuilder, I would be huge. But I can't. Every time I break 230 pounds, I'm just very uncomfortable. I know that's light, but we all have our.
That's really not light, though. It's really not. I mean, a 230-pound man is a big man.
Yeah, 5'10", 230 pounds at 9.4% body fat. So, way beyond the amount of muscle I could have to compete in classic physique, for example. So definitely, even by bodybuilding standards, I'm a very large, muscular man, but nothing compared to, some of the pro bodybuilders that we deal with. And I can't because it's so uncomfortable. So it's not like I'm megadosing steroids all the time. I'm doing short experiments. So we talked about the Trestolone experiment. That was a 28-day experiment at 100 milligrams of Trestolone every day. And then probably after that, I probably went on a low dosage of SARMs to bridge. Then I probably threw in another experiment of maybe a steroid that didn't even work. And so for the last 6 years, there's a lot of things I've tried that didn't work at all. Some things that I tried that worked amazing and had no side effects, some things that had side effects. So right now I'm thinking about competing in 30 days in a bodybuilding competition in Sacramento. And I haven't exactly decided what stack I'm going to do because normally I only prepare for a bodybuilding competition for about 2 weeks. But last time I prepared for a bodybuilding competition that I used Winstraw, I ran it for the 2 weeks before the show, but I really looked my best a week after the show. Winstraw really started doing its magic about 3 weeks in. So I think I need to extend my competition preps to 3 weeks.
A grueling 3-week prep.
Yeah, that gives me about one more week to decide what I want to have in my system on the competition day. And in the meantime, this week I'll run mostly I've been doing SARMs. I did a SARM experiment recently where I did YK11 and LGD 3303, which are two of some fairly newer ones.
We got a lot of questions about YK11. Give us a little bit of your opinion on that.
When I read, when you read stuff online, so much I know is inaccurate, and possibly they're not getting the right stuff because there's a lot of, back when you were carrying it.
We actually never carried YK11. I carried the LGD. So I have
Sorry,
not.
I mean,
I have
I'm
never
saying
taken YK11, and so when people ask me, I can only give them answers based on what I read, and I don't like to give my own answers on something that I haven't experimented with. So it's been one of those things that I've been curious, should I experiment with, just so I can have my own perspective on it.
Okay, so back when you carried the SARMs, it was different because you're running it as a mainstream supplement company, and if you say 10 milligrams of ostrine, there's 10 milligrams of ostrine. But a lot of these research chemical companies, you don't really know
Yep.
whether you're actually got the YK11. YK11 is actually very expensive, and so if there's one of the SARMs that they're gonna kind of like Anavar, if there's
Yep.
something that's gonna be faked, YK11 is one that's highly likely to be faked. Now, I've definitely experimented with the real YK11, and I definitely used it again recently. The first time I used it, I thought it was God mode. I mean, it felt like full-blown Anadrol, and I took it spread throughout the day. I took it like one capsule 10 times a day, so I really spread it out, and that was 50 milligrams per day. And I blew up like I was taking 100 milligrams of Anadrol per day.
Wow.
And then I experimented with it a couple times that I didn't notice much from it, and then this last one when I did it, and I didn't do it for very long, and I combined it with the LGD3303, so we don't know which one was causing it, but I felt extremely anabolic on those two, and it does seem to be dosage dependent. The YK11 seems to be more effective in higher dosages, and it's got a shorter half-life, so it should be spread out more. It is meant to be, or it's used as a myostatin inhibitor, mainly. So that means it would be highly synergistic with other things that are anabolic. I wouldn't use it as a standalone anabolic. I would use it as something to be synergistic to remove the limits of muscle growth potential that you have from using other compounds. So I was using the LGD3303 as my anabolic to actually build muscle, and the YK11 to lower the myostatin to remove the barrier to building muscle. But I don't know whether it's more effective, equally effective, or less effective than the Epicat. So like you carry the Epicat, right, PJ?
Yep.
So that is a myostatin inhibitor, and I've read the science on it. The science looks pretty legit in real world. I'm still not sure. I think that the Epicat is probably the most effective thing that we have over the counter, and I don't know whether it's more effective or less effective than YK11. But if my goal was to try to lower myostatin muscle growth, then those are the two compounds that are on the market right now that I'm looking at: YK11 and Epicat.
Cool. I mean, we've had a few questions over the past year on YK11, and one of them was how to dose it. Should it be dosed throughout the day? Which you answered that already. So that's I appreciate the answer on that one. Now I'll know for the future. Maybe I'll mess around with that one a little bit, and we'll see.
So luckily, we only have 3 questions left, but I think they may cause the longest answers.
Okay.
So keeping that in mind, I don't know how much space we have left on a memory card, so we should probably try to wrap up the rest of this podcast.
Okay.
So the first question of these 3 says, for PJ and Tony Huge, have you guys ever had to drop people in your life to pursue a dream you had or have to cut ties with someone you love because they didn't support it or were mentally and physically holding you back? Thanks, Talon.
Tony?
Okay, so I can't think of any time that was specifically the case because what I do, okay, so I have 2 answers to that. One is the type of person that I am is kind of I do put a lot of energy into other people. I help a lot of other people, but I don't let it deviate from where my goal is. So I'm a very giving person, but at the same time, people say I'm very narcissistic and like self-centered onto what it is that my main goal is. And so I've never had to cut someone that was holding me back because they never would have gotten any ground in holding me back in the first place. Like it just never would have been like if I'm dating a girl, I'm not going to go to her place. I'm not going to drive to meet her. She's coming over my place, period. And we're going to go to the gym, and we're going to go to eat where I want to eat, and we're going to go on the jet ski because I want to go on the jet ski. It's all what I want to do. I don't go out of my way for a girl or anybody else really. But I will do a lot for her. It's not like she doesn't get a lot in return, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the other The other element to that I noticed, though, is that whenever I'm in a long-term relationship and I break up with that girl, I seem to make the most amount of progress. So it must have been holding me back in some way, but I can't exactly pinpoint what I was doing differently that it was holding me back.
Well, bodybuilding is a selfish pastime, a selfish sport. There's a lot that you do focused around yourself to be the best that you can be, especially at the competitive level. I think the competitive level is a truly selfish life to live, because you can only eat at these times, you have to do cardio at this time, and everything is essentially me, and that's difficult for the partner to often take. I think we have similarities in the ways where the most of the part is I do what I want to do, and if the other person doesn't want to do it, then they're probably not going to be doing it with me anyway. But I will tell you, when I was younger, I dated a girl for 5 years. I've had many long relationships. I was always more of a relationship kind of guy. I dated a girl for 5 years, and she was a little older than me. She was a school teacher, and she was ready to have children. She was 32, and I was 27, and I felt that I was in the prime of my bodybuilding career and trying to chase my goals. And she wanted me to, quote unquote, get a real job and stop bodybuilding. And I had just started my online training business, and I told her, I said, I promise you, if you let me do this, you can have all the money that I make, because it's not about the money to me, it's about the accomplishment. I have something that I want to accomplish, and I'm not going to back down from it. And if you can't take that, then I'm sorry, then we're not going to be able to be together. And she was a wonderful girl until she put this ultimatum on me. And she said, well, it's one or the other. And I said, well, then you're out. And I broke her heart. And I was pretty heartbroken too. And it was a very sad breakup. And she couldn't believe that I wasn't going to quit what I was doing. And then years later, when my training business got really, really successful, and I started getting into magazines and whatnot, she actually reached out to me and she said, you never broke, sight of your goal. You never left the path, and you actually did what you were going to say that you were going to do. And that's pretty admirable. And I said, yeah, and I would have let you have all the money too, if you had just been patient. But, now I'm super, super driven on my goals. And I think if you're a visionary or have like an entrepreneurial mindset, many people take you as narcissistic anyway, and I'm sure there is some level of narcissism to it, but when you're that focused on something, if your partner can't understand how important it is for you to accomplish what you need to accomplish, however great it may be to you, it's that important. And so either you've got to have somebody that truly gets it, or you have to be alone. It's one or the other, because otherwise you're going to have consistent fights and headaches. And I've told this to many people over the years. Either your partner has to basically be 100% supportive of letting you do whatever you need to do, or you just stick to being alone, because nobody's going to bother you when you're alone. And really, that's it.
Yeah. So another common question that I get is, why don't I date like models, like Instagram models, like super hot, whatever, women that like the type of women that an American man dreams they could be with? Why don't I date that type of girl? But I have before, but it doesn't work. No, it doesn't work for me, because they have their own life and their own goals and whatever. If they have their photo shoots, and I'm not going to go with them, I'm not going to go with them to their photo shoots, and I'm not going to have my life revolve around their life. But you have to sort of have the alpha and the beta in the relationship. And so I always have to be the alpha, and I will date one of these girls that's very busy and a Barbie type girl, whatever. But then it never gets past a couple dates, because what comes back second or third date, it's like, no, I'm not going to go with you to your thing. You need to come with me to my thing. Well, she needs to go to her thing, so it doesn't work. So I end up going for more of the submissive females that follow my lead, that do everything that I want and that support me, and then they get their pleasure from pleasing me and me providing for them. That's the type of relationship.
It's a much happier life. I can promise you, listeners, that my ex-wife was the most alpha woman that I've ever met. And yes, she was very, very beautiful. People to this day still tell me how beautiful they thought she was, but she actually hated that I was an alpha male. And she would say all the time, "You're too fucking alpha for me." And I would say to her, "It is not normal for a woman to be as alpha as you are. I am doing what society says that I should do. You're the one that's different here." But she hated it, and that was why we had so many issues.
Yep.
All right. This one is the one I've been waiting for the entire time. And it says, "Gentlemen, it is me, the dude from the long sex and relationship question last week, here for not a question, but a play-by-play of how things went down. Side note before I get into it, I was making her come every time we did have sex, and she rarely masturbated, and when she did, she only thought of times we had sex as a couple."
Of course. What a sweetheart.
So here we go. "I decided that the best option after listening to you guys was to talk to her. I needed to form some kind of communication over the problem. Honestly, my gut feeling was that it wasn't going to go well, that my comments would be responded to by tears and comments such as 'I'm not good enough for you,' crying, and whatnot. So going into the conversation, I was hesitant and wanted to be careful how I worded things. This is what I said almost exactly because I think the way I said it was important to what happened next. I said, 'You probably have noticed I haven't been myself recently, and I think I've come to the realization that it is over the past couple of months I have been sexually repressed and unfulfilled.' To my absolute surprise, she took it incredibly well and maturely. I then continued to explain the rest of my feelings and even told her that I was attracted to other girls and that it was hurting me because I did not want that. After a proper conversation, we ended up having sex. The most surprising thing was, well, it was unreal. As she was riding me, she said, 'Let me try something,' and put her finger in her ass. As a kinky son of a bitch, I lost my shit at this point, mainly because I have tried sneaking my way and talking my way into the butt since way early on in the relationship, so for such a dramatic change to happen blew my mind. Post-sex, I told her that I wanted her to masturbate every day and to watch porn specifically and not think about me. So the next day I asked her what she masturbated to. She showed me, and it was a damn good kink. I understand that she was bisexual, but in the past she told me that it was because she was purely attracted to people's being without gender. So everything has gone way better than I ever possibly imagined, to the stage where I am straight up baffled at how such a change could occur in a person, and you guys are probably thinking the same thing. I asked her, turns out earlier in the day, she had an interaction with a parent of hers she doesn't particularly get along with, where the parent complained about her allegedly stealing items from the kitchen. At that moment, she had a moment of self-actualization, or what Tony Robbins calls the moment of change or something. She told me she just realized that she can display traits of what that parent does, and she dislikes them for that. I don't understand what happened, whether it was the way I said it or what happened earlier in the day, but there was a dramatic change of character for the better. We plan on buying some Entice for future getaways. Thank you guys so much for all your advice. It felt like it was from a true friend. Anyways, I'm going to keep my identity secret until I tell her about messaging into you guys, or even if I do, but I did order a shit ton of subs recently. Since this is Ask PJ and not Tell fucking PJ about your entire life, here's a fun question. If all the Blackstone employees had a gladiator Royal Rumble to the death, who would come out as the winner? Till the next time, amigos."
Well,
after all that, that's hilarious.
I must say, I think, let's pat ourselves on the back. We deserve a lot of praise here, because the guy was like at the end of his rope when he wrote in, and we gave him advice, and now he is having
the time of his life.
They're probably going to live happily ever after. I hope we get to meet this couple.
Yes.
I love getting. So I am, and Josh is too. We're pretty damn open with our sex life and the things that we're into and experimentation. And a lot of people are so uptight about it. So when we get sex questions on the show, we welcome them. So hopefully now, that we've had Dr. Tony Huge on the show, who's done some different experimenting than us for sure. We'll get some more sex-based questions in. I tell you that I love this subject. I really do. I am really happy to hear about anybody's positive sex lives. I have gay friends, and they tell me the fucking craziest shit. And sometimes I'm like, you're grossing me out. But I still enjoy to know what makes them happy, because I will say this to the day that I die. There is truly nothing better than having an orgasm, and whatever it takes to get you off the best way, that's the best. We all should be doing that. If it's ladyboys, or if it's just guys, or if it's being tied up and peed on, whatever it is, whatever gets you off the best, you should be doing that all the time. It's the best thing that you can do for yourself. And it oftentimes doesn't really cost any money either, which is great.
Depending on what you're into.
Depending on what you're into, yes.
Sometimes people got to get paid for that shit.
So I'm very happy to hear that. And Tony, you seem like the kind of guy who I think has a pretty open mind and feels the same way. You know, there's some people are just way too uptight about sex.
Yeah, there's two things that he said that stood out to me. One is he said that the bisexual thing was intriguing because then she's attracted to the person, not the gender, the person's being. Yeah. And there's an element of that in the ladyboy thing. That's what's so confusing, because when you connect with a ladyboy and you don't have that same gender, I mean, you do, because they look like a female, so they get you in and you're attracted, like sexually. You can't help getting an erection. You're going to get an erection because she's got great tits, great ass, beautiful, and she's doing all the right things. So you're going to be hard, but then you're like, wow, I'm hard, but this person's actually a man, but I'm not gay. And you're confused. And then the only way to sort of, in the end, is like, okay, I'm actually attracted to this person, and I'm curious. And you start actually, like, I get to know these ladyboys, and it's fascinating to hear their background. I mean, when you think about it, doesn't it make you curious? How did they become a ladyboy? Yeah. What's their life experience been like? It's so fascinating to hear. And then you start almost not falling in love, like a deep, romantic and marry each other love, but you start feeling this love through understanding and through human connection. And so I understand that what he's saying. The way that I get girls to do things that I think they wouldn't otherwise do, like he had a hard time approaching her in the first place, is I did a video about this. I have a YouTube channel called Relationship Starts Tomorrow, which is just like a side hobby thing. I don't do it that often, but I sort of give my relationship experiences on it. And one of the videos I did was I have a dream, and it was about how if I want a girl to do something kinky, which I am actually very not kinky. I just like missionary, very simple, and very fast. I mean, I just like my foreplay is I want the girl to massage me for 30 minutes, and then I use lube, and I'm done in like 5. It's like fireworks. It's like a 5-minute fireworks, but still, it's not enough time, and there's no foreplay on going the other direction.
Okay.
But if I do want to do something kinky, the girl's really conservative, because remember, I like Asian girls that are usually a lot more conservative than white, black, or Mexican girls. And the way I do it is I say, last night I had a dream. I had a dream that you were. I'm just going to use the peeing thing since you brought it up. Some people like to get tied up and peed on to orgasm. I had this dream last night that I was in the shower sitting down, and you were peeing on top of me and touching yourself. And like at first it was so weird, but then it really turned me on. And then now I've been thinking about it more and more. And so, see, it's not your fault that you had a dream. So she can't really blame you. And you're sharing something that she can't make you feel bad for sharing something that you didn't have control over, but that's going on inside your head. And it doesn't make her feel bad. So I think that technique works fairly well.
You're a goddamn genius. You're a goddamn genius, Tony. Holy shit.
I think that there's not a better way to even end this episode than that. We have no more questions, right? Because that's such a good answer. And by the way, that does work. What he's saying does work.
There's the funniest sex-related stories. Save that for the ending.
Let's save that because we'll save that for the ending of the next one.
All right. So I mean, holy shit! Thank you so much, Dr. Tony Huge. This has been incredible. Absolutely stunning.
Long one too. Thank you for giving us your time.
Thank you, and I will definitely someday come down there and party with you guys in Florida. And PJ, you and I might end up in Thailand together sometime.
I hope so. I have a lot of learning to do.
All right.
Well, thank you again, Tony Huge, and those of you who live under a stone and perhaps don't know Tony Huge, you should at least follow him on Instagram. And it's just simply Dr. Tony Huge. And you could check out Enhanced Athlete. Anything else you want us to? Oh, well, check out his Generation Iron special coming out soon. I'm excited for that one. I know that my girlfriend is excited for that one too. She saw the trailer for it, and she was like, "Ooh, that looks good."
Yeah, that's what I saw, and it's very gripping.
So
in uncensored content, I'm uploading all the videos to anabolictv.com.
Okay,
awesome.
So and you want to see the uncensored stuff, anabolictv.com. Well, I thought that was a hell of a podcast. We'll have to see what the listeners think, but we'll get some cool little sound bites put up on Instagram, and the podcast will probably be up. Eric, when will the podcast be up on iTunes? So the audio, Eric says, will be up by Saturday, and then the video probably sometime next week.
Cool. Send me a link. I'll publish it to my audience also.
We will. Thank you very much, Tony.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you both.
Thank you again, brother. We're going to end this like we always do with a peace out. Bye.